I'm going to begin, as we always do in the Plum Village tradition, with 3 sounds of the bell. The bell is very important to us. We say that in the sound of the bell is the voice of the Buddha calling us back to our true home. So it's the voice of the Buddha inside each of us, calling us, inviting us to come back to the present moment, to let go of the past, even today. This moment will never be repeated, and it's never happened again, never happened before, and it's never going to happen again. And just take 3 breaths in between each sound of the bell and get in touch with your body, your breathing, the Sangha around you. You know, we are a family here together for the next however long it is going to be. I'm not sure yet. And enjoy the sound of the bell. Oh, wait. So I'd like to begin with telling you what I'm not going to do. And I'm not going to relate humour to a kind of deep Dharma lesson. Somebody said, oh, you should tell a story. Tell one of the stories that Thay tells. Thay is Thich Nhat Hanh, and I should have, dear respected teacher, before I began. So he's so good at that. And also to tell one of his stories. Well, he's better at telling his own stories than I am. But what I am going to do is share with you what I've learned and observed about this humour. I do know that Thay once said, does anybody know about the 51 mental formations? Nobody? Oh, yeah, no, yes, he does, yeah, okay. Hello. Well, that was weird to start, because 51, that was my favourite finish in darts. 17, double 17, really good finish. And then I was getting together some things for an art auction, and we found we had 51 donors. And I was going to do a talk about the 52nd, because Thay once said that there should be one more. There should be another, a 52nd mental formation, and that should be humour. So I got a list of the 51, and on that was from Plum Village, France. And I found that on this list, he'd also added quite a few more, not just the second one, but that they're organised into wholesome, unwholesome, there's primary, and there's serious ones and not so serious ones. I won't go into all of them. They're all available in a book that he wrote, and also on the that Thay wrote, and also on the net. But there's another category which is called indeterminate. And so I understand that to mean that that's where the 52nd one should go, because humour can be used in a wholesome way, but it can also be used in an unwholesome way. And I started to try and organize in my own head the types of humour. And you might be able to offer any more, but I came up with sort of general wit, sarcasm, cynicism, sardonicism. I thought of slapstick as well. So anybody got any others to offer? You could have divided up what might be humorous into its various degrees? Yeah?
Wait, Fitz, when you laugh,
Sorry?
recall. If you remind them of something, recall is a device in stand-up, and audiences always laugh at it. I feel they're patting themselves in the back to see, I remember what you said an hour ago, and now we're laughing at remembrance of it. I don't know if it fits for you.
Okay, a remembrance.
Yeah, recall.
Recall.
It's a device in stand-up.
Yeah.
You allude to something you said at the start of the set, and it always gets a laugh. Sometimes callback.
Callback.
Yeah, people seem to find
That's
it
interesting. Okay, I'm going to add that to my little list and then think about that, because I think that idea of callback probably fits with all of them. But it's lovely to have input from the audience, and I'll probably ask for quite a lot of it. So I started thinking that I started thinking back to the first time I remember laughing at something and wondering, why did I laugh at that? That was something very serious and actually tragic. And I'd been away. It was when I was quite young. I'd just finished an affair with somebody. I'd been away for a week or two. I got back, and the first thing that somebody said to me in the shared flat I had was, "Nick died." And I laughed. And it's almost as soon as I'd done it, I thought, wow, what a reaction. And in later years, when I thought back at it, I thought, how could I laugh about that? So what I think was happening in me was a kind of way of dealing with something that was too difficult to actually take on board what I was being told. And so this laugh came out. And I observed, especially in my son, he tends to laugh if anything too emotional gets talked about. He's a Taurian and a businessman. So he'll kind of laugh at something, and I don't think he's really finding anything funny. He's finding a way to kind of distance himself and avoid an emotion. So that was the first time I thought of how a laugh can be nothing to do with something funny, but a lot to do with allowing a kind of release of emotion. And way back in the 50s, now I have a friend who leads laughter workshops. I'm sure some of you know about laughter workshops. But way back in the 50s, an Indian scientist discovered that laughter released anxiety, increased the robustness of the immune system, lowered blood pressure, and all sorts of other wonderful, valuable things for your health, mental and physical, by the simple process of laughing. And not actually even real laughing. What he found was that if somebody did a bit of fake laughing, it had the same effect. And so Thay, our teacher, is always talking about smiling. You smile to your anger and you welcome it as an old friend. You don't beat yourself up for feeling angry again. You accept the fact that, well, I'm a human being. I'm angry now. Hello, I'm going to take care of you. And smile to it. And so I invite you often, if you can, and you can. However, if ever you're feeling worried about the future or anything, your relationship, what you're going to have for dinner, anything like that, and you feel yourself getting a bit, smile. And a miraculous change happens. And this has been scientifically proved. So being able to meet the difficulties in life with a smile is not, I mean, I remember once my daughter ringing me up and saying, oh, these people, you know, they don't know how to mend a zip here, and they don't know how to wash up after them and all the rest of it. She was a student at the time. And she said, what am I going to do? I come back and I found the kitchen all in a mess, and this person thinks it's like despair that she can't sew a zip in, and or her nail's broken or something. I said, well, just hold on a moment. I said, just smile at it. Oh, mother, you know, that's too easy. That's too easy. But it's true. It's, you know, next time, just try it. Just try it. Smile to your anger, smile to your despair, smile to your anxiety, your... What are you doing there? No, you, yes.
I'm taking notes.
You're taking notes, okay. Mm-hmm. Why is that then? Why are you taking notes? I'm interested. It's not a criticism.
For reflection, like what you said about smiling.
Okay.
In particular, I have a metta practice, and that very much resonates with the kind of the teachings I found there, where it's when you're open to everything, you welcome everything on like a mental level. But that's another layer. That's a physiological layer I can add to that practice as well. Not just like mentally noting I love you to anger or closed-mindedness and stuff. I can actually reinforce that physicality as well.
Okay. And that made you smile, me asking you, didn't it? Yeah. Okay, so I'm sort of, you know, I'm of a different generation, and I do know that there are people who have a need to make notes all the time. But you know, if you're making notes, you're not really listening. I find it very difficult. Like I meet with a group occasionally online, and sometimes I end up being the one that takes notes, and I find it very difficult to take notes of what people are saying, as well as truly listening. But you know, that it's your practice, it's your habit to take notes. Feel free. It's just weird to have the phone doing it, isn't it? For me anyway, and not a pen and paper. Okay. So as usual, I've gone off-piste again. I am, I haven't said who I am. My name is Teri West, and my ordination name when joining the Order of Interbeing, which Thich Nhat Hanh founded during the Vietnamese War, with 7 lay social workers. That's how our order began. So my ordination name was True Door of Virtue. And I had to laugh at myself when my immediate reaction in the ceremony, I heard all these wonderfully poetic names. You might have heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. You know, true, treasured jewel of the source, or true, wonderful garden of the practice. And I thought, oh, what's mine going to be? What's mine going to be? And I'm always at the end, either surnames or Christian names, T and W. So I had to wait. It was all after the other. I wonder what mine's going to be. And mine was True Door of Virtue. I thought, oh, God, what a name. And then I thought, Teri, how could you have that reaction? You know, whatever name this magical being is going to give to you, you know, you accept it for heaven's sake and be glad. But my immediate reaction, and our immediate reactions come from our emotions, not from our thinking. purely from our emotions. So what emotion was happening in there with me? A kind of, I don't know. I haven't even actually put that into words yet. But what I know I was feeling was that I want a poetic name. You know, I'm here like 12, no, more than that, 2000, 1988. Anyway, quite a long time practicing, and practicing really, you know, diligently, and I get through door. And then I realised what a wonderful name it is, because one of the other order members pointed out, but you're a Dharma door, Teri. It's a wonderful name. So, so that was just to illustrate how we react to things straight away. You know, my response to my dear friend's death was laughing because I couldn't face it. And my response to being given the most wonderful Dharma name was purely on how it sounded to me. It sounded and virtue, my goodness me, you know, that's a lot to live up to, being virtuous. So we kind of need to look, I think, when we do find something amusing or humorous, where is it coming from? And then I started thinking about, you know, what is it that we find funny? Like, let's go back to a Laurel and Hardy film, maybe. Or, you know, and it's usually because somebody has experienced a dreadful, painful event. But we laugh. Why do we laugh? Why do we laugh at that? That somebody has, you know, just had a whole house fall on him, or, you know, well, the archetypal one is slipping on a banana skin, isn't it? You know, it's funny for us. So what's behind that laughter? When we don't wish that person to have pain, do we? You know, we're Buddhists. We don't wish pain on anybody. Are we laughing with compassion? Kind of not really. Not really. Can we laugh with compassion? I think we probably can if we put ourselves in the place. If we are actually putting ourselves in the place of somebody that's tripped over and has got a bruise, then maybe we are laughing with a bit of compassion. But a lot of the time we laugh at unfortunate circumstances, and what's that about? You know, I'm aware I'm asking more questions than I'm telling you anything, but I just want to share with you that once I'd let myself in for this, then where my thought processes were going about humour and how often it can be used, and where it's come from. I mean, it's come from, I realised at one point that when I hadn't been long in the practice, that I did use sarcasm. I'm very ashamed to admit that now. I did occasionally, not always, some people are always sarcastic, come out with sarcasm, and so I started thinking, where does that come from? And I remembered then that my parents, they were supposed to be very witty, funny people, but their sense of humour was really mostly sarcastic. One of their favourite phrases was, well, chance would be a fine thing. So if you said you wanted to do something, they were basically saying, well, the chance to do that would be a fine thing. But they didn't mean that. What they meant was, you'll never get the chance to do it. So there's this strange way we use words that, and there's this saying, isn't there? There's many a true word spoken in jest. So you can say something as a joke or as a sarcastic comment, and you actually mean it. But it's a way of disguising it in some kind of misplaced sense of humour. Anybody got a question so far? You can smile if you like. You know, it's really encouraged during this talk. Whoa, there you go. Hello?
Why do you think you laugh, like when someone hurts themselves?
Why do I laugh when...
Why do you think you laugh in those scenarios where it's like someone's hurt themselves?
Why do I laugh when somebody's hurt themselves?
Or whatever makes you laugh?
What I make me laugh. Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know whether I do anymore. Which is why my son sometimes thinks, you've got no sense of fun, mother. What happened? He tripped over something, and I only felt compassion, whereas, you know, the kids laughed. His sons laughed at it because he fell over, and he said, you've got no sense of fun. It must vary. It must vary. I can still laugh at a Laurel and Hardy film, though. I can, or Buster Keaton. And why is that? Why is that? I do believe that our practice is to ask ourselves these questions all the time.
Have you come to any conclusions on that?
Sorry?
Have you come to any conclusions on why you laugh at, say, slapstick, if that's what you're saying?
Well, as far as I could see, it's the kind of image. You know, if somebody goes head over heels after tripping on a banana skin, that's quite it's a funny event, even if it does end in pain and tears, yeah. That's the only conclusion I've come across so far. Unless it's just a kind of gut reaction to our conditioning. Because I think that's what we also need to think about is where has what we find funny come from? Is it from our parents, our ancestors, our culture?
Well, I wondered that. I wondered whether all other nations find slapstick funny because, yeah, Laurel and Hardy, a lot of people will laugh at that.
Yeah.
But is there a Laurel? Is that a world response, or is that a other?
Yeah, that was another thing that I thought a lot about, that what might be funny to an English person might not be funny at all to somebody in a different part of the world, and we know that's true. We know. I think I read somewhere ages ago that actually, you know, the same joke told to several different nationalities would not always be funny.
But that was related just to language, because slapstick,
Yes.
it's universal.
Yes, yeah. It's just, yeah, it's a visual.
I'm Italian, but you know, it makes no difference. Wherever you are in Europe or anywhere,
How falls in your head, you laugh.
you have, you know, like Mr. Bean. You know, he doesn't say anything, totally idiotic,
Yes.
but you know.
Yes, we laugh at Mr. Bean. I laugh at Mr. Bean. And yet his whole story is tragedy, isn't it? Nothing works. Nothing turns out right.
Yeah.
So, you know, and our practice tells us that as well, doesn't it? To laugh at, to smile. Okay, the Buddha smiled. It's the, and that's another thing interesting. I'm sorry, I'll give another little space. Is that all right? Otherwise, we're going to turn into a discussion with about 30 people. And, you know, I wouldn't be needed then at all. I could just leave you to discuss. Where was I? Ah, yes, the future Buddha, Maitreya, or the laughing monk. He's kind of metamorphosed into the Japanese laughing monk. But as far as I read, that was an image of the future Buddha, which is laughing and often surrounded by children. So what's all that about then? You know, that the previous Buddha knew that when we get to needing the next one, we need a good laugh at life. And that's what our practice is about, is accepting. It's a kind of accepting whatever is and smiling at it, taking care of it. I'm just going to look at my notes because I know I've got more bits and pieces here that I can say. I think we finish at 4:45, is that right, Sangadara?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, you have long.
Okay.
4:15.
Okay. The thing that amazed me most about what I choose to watch and what makes me laugh is sometimes I don't find out till later. My goodness, that actually was quite... So death is coming into this quite a lot. So my husband died, and I'd nursed him until he died. He died at home. And I then found a series called 6 Feet Under, which was hilarious. And it was about a family of funeral directors. And they kept having like visitations from some of their people they'd buried and all the rest of it. And after I'd watched about 5 episodes of this, and I thought, that's a weird thing to do, isn't it? I've just gone through this death, and now I'm watching more death. But it was funny, very clever, very witty, and also there was quite a lot of learning in it, because often these funerals, they were American, but they had to look after a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist or an atheist. They had different, and then these people would come back to their funeral parlour and have conversations with them. So at first I thought, now that's a weird thing to do, Teri. You've just gone through a death and now you're watching more death. But actually, then I realised, but that was a very healing thing to do, because it kind of allowed me to look at death from the way we detach ourselves. Laughter is a way of distancing ourselves, in a way. Smiling brings it closer, but somehow finding the comedy in something allows us to look at something serious. So I actually came to the conclusion after a while that that was a very sensible thing to do, even though I hadn't done it consciously at all. It really didn't occur to me till I'd watched at least 5 episodes, probably more, because I did nothing for about a fortnight. I ate a lot, stayed in bed and watched 6 Feet Under because I was so tired. And that was a helpful thing to do. I'm not saying that's what we should all do if we've experienced a tragedy, is to go to bed and eat a lot. It depends. Sometimes it can work. The other thing that I thought of, I watched a long time ago. You've heard of Ajahn Brahm? He makes jokes all the time, which gets a bit tedious after a while, I think, but that's my view. It can get a bit too much. But he did say something very interesting in one talk about that we think of dementia as being a really sad, tragic thing to happen, especially to somebody we know. But when you look at it, they've let go of it. They don't know the past, they don't know the future. They're living in the present. So they're doing quite well, really. Their kind of essential character can take over sometimes, and they get angry, but in my experience, and my mother had dementia, it kind of passes. And so sometimes we can think of something as being a tragedy, but then when we kind of apply that kind of thinking to it, well, what is that? Is it just picking out the positives? Something like that. There's always another side to something, always. We can't help that. That's what the Native American forked stick in front of their teepees is telling you, that there's always 2 ways to look at things. And I love their phrase, you bury the hatchet, but you always remember where it is. So, yeah, there's always 2 ways to look at something. So, I'd like another question, please. You had a question earlier.
When you were talking about laughing at misfortune, I was going to say, don't you think it's not so much the misfortune, you were talking about Laurel Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much the misfortune you laugh at as the punctured pretension. Punctured pretension and punctured formality and punctured ego are all very similar. So
Yes.
if someone is aspiring to achieve something,
Yeah.
mentally, all their everyday brain is going into achieving something, and they're suddenly brought down by their natural humanity, which undermines the whole thing. We laugh in relief because it's actually a collapse of an egotistical structure.
Yeah.
I always think that, and I think in formal terms, like puncturing formality is always funny. You know the bit in Four Weddings and a Funeral when the vicar gets the name wrong and all that. I mean, it's very in everyday life. If you puncture formality, people giggle.
Yes, I've got it even written here. The Emperor's New Clothes.
Absolutely. So it's kind
What?
of just being
Yes,
caught out
yes.
by
Pride.
being caught out
Yes.
by real life,
Yes.
as opposed to the life that you think of constructed.
Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you for that.
They say that keeping up appearances, it comes to mind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Formality,
Mrs.
informality,
Bucket,
public facing,
rather
private
Mrs.
facing.
Bouquet.
Yeah, the kind of aspiration to nobility and pomp and circumstance. Yes, thank you. I have got it written here, The Emperor's New Clothes. I'm not very attentive to what I've written down for my own talk. Yes, I put it here, egotistical habit energies, freedom from that, to imagine that you actually have control over anything as well, that your thoughts, that's a kind of thought thing, an ego thing going on. So I think what I'm trying to do by thinking about this for my own practice is to really be aware of when I want to make a joke about something. Because when I watched my last year's talk, I tended to joke a lot. And there is a place for humour in practice. As Frank Zappa said, is there a place for humour in music? So is there a place for humour in Buddhist practice? Yes, there is. There is a lot of too much seriousness, I think. But also we can kind of go a bit the other way and then offer something that's really quite lightweight, if you like. So my own practice is to really look at that habit energy I have of making a joke of things, because that might be a way of hiding from talking about something in a deep way. Thay was so good at that. He was so good at that. So I'm not going to try and parrot his teachings. And my favourite one is he tells a personal story of when he was hammering a nail in a wall to hang up a picture. And he mistakenly hit his other thumb. And what he said was that so that thumb didn't accuse that hand. The left hand didn't accuse the right hand of being awful, and the right hand didn't say, "How are you silly to get in the way?" The right hand took care of the left hand. And that was an illustration to show how connected we are. And that, if we see someone in trouble, we don't accuse them, we go to help them. And online, that story isn't online, but if you'd like to look at one story that he tells for children, that when you hear him tell it live, it's just beautiful. And I won't even attempt, I might try and learn it and tell it in my own way, but it's called The Seed of Corn. So he invites children to go and plant a seed of corn and look after it until it's growing into a mature corn plant. And then he invites the children to ask the grown-up corn plant to remember when they were a seed. And the corn plant's really, what? Look at me. I'm 5 feet tall. I was never something like that, So then Thay allows that nice little story, and he tells it so beautifully, the conversation between the grown-up corn and the seed of corn, or the grown-up corn and the child that looked after it, to illustrate how, continuation and that nothing ever dies, that, seed of corn is still there. You might think the seed is gone, but the seed hasn't gone. The seed is just transformed. So I will I could also, okay, I also worked as a storyteller for a long time. And a couple of years ago, our trustees asked me if I would tell a story for the AGM. And they wanted me to tell a story about community. And so I did a little bit of thinking, and I said, well, I've got a 15-minute story or a 5-minute story. So they opted for the 5-minute story. So I told this story, and there were two completely opposite reactions. So I'm going to tell you the story, and I'd like you to just be in touch with how you feel about the story, what it is for you. And you might know it, but don't tell anybody if you know the ending. So once upon a time, there were 3 companions, and they lived in a cottage all together in a wood, and they'd lived there for many years, very happy and harmoniously, because they had the household chores nicely sorted out between the 3 of them. And they were a mouse, a bird, and a sausage. So the mouse's job was to draw water from the well every day and set the table for dinner. The bird's job was to go out and collect wood for the fire. And the sausage's job, of course, was to do the cooking. And this had gone on for some years, as I said, quite happily, until one day the bird, flying out to collect wood, met another bird. And they began exchanging life stories, as we do. And the other bird said, well, I think you've got the raw deal here, mate. You know, you're going out time after time, picking up wood, taking it back, going out, getting more, taking it back. What does the mouse do? She draws the water, she puts it in the pot on the fire that you've prepared, and then puts her feet up. What does the sausage do? Just rolls around in the water that the mouse has got, and there you are, there's a nice tasty meal. I guess they just drink the water. Don't try and investigate too much with these stories, no, just accept it. He said, I think you ought to make changes myself. And the bird thought he was right. So that evening, when the bird returned to the cottage, he demanded from the mouse and the sausage that they make changes. I do all the work around here, you know. What do? You put your feet up till dinner time. What do? Roll around in some nice hot water to flavour it? No way, mate. We're going to do things differently. The mouse and the sausage did everything they could to persuade him to leave things just as they were. But in the end they agreed, okay. And from that time on, the sausage would collect wood, the bird would draw the water from the fire, from the well, and the mouse would do the cooking. So off went the sausage the next morning, and on the way to collect wood, he met a dog and became eaten. And the mouse and the bird, very worried about, where's our friend, the sausage? He did not come back, So the bird said he would go out and look for him. And on the way to look for the sausage, he met the dog again. Have you seen our friend the sausage? He came out to collect some wood and we don't know where he is. Yes, I did, said the dog, and very tasty it was too. And then began to look at the bird in such a way that encouraged the bird to get back home right away. So he got back home and shared with his friend the mouse that the sausage was no more. And they had to carry on as best they could. So the water was on the fire, and the mouse did what he'd seen the sausage do every day and dived into the boiling water. And very soon, not a whisker was left. And the bird, panicking, flying here and there in the kitchen, where's my friend the mouse? He's gone, and it's all on my own. And he flew out to get, and as he flew around in the room, it knocked some wood over, which caught on the stove and began to make a fire in the cottage. So the bird flew out to get water from the well, and his foot got stuck in the chain of the well, and he was pulled down into the well and drowned. So we're laughing, aren't we? We're laughing. Why are we? Well, some of us aren't. And as I said, I asked two trustees afterwards, what did you think of that? I thought that was terrible. Why did you tell that? No, that was the key. None of them asked me why I told it. Now, if I told that story to a bunch of storytellers and asked them afterwards, what do you think of that story then? They'd have said, why did you tell it? But the two trustees were absolutely, two of them were really cross that I told this dreadful story. But two said, that was the best AGM ever. That was such a great story. Where did you get it? It's in Grimm's. So there you see the two polarized reactions to the same story. And of course, you know, you're aware of why I told it. I was told to tell a story about community. And that story illustrates what happens when a harmonious community decides for no real reason other than somebody said, you know, you're doing all the work. Well, there is always that. That will always happen in a community, that some people do more work than others. And that's the human condition. Some people need to be carried, as we know in our society. So I'm going to stop there. I'm glad people are still laughing. I love it.
Sorry.
Yes.
Can I say something? Just an observation.
Go on.
At the end of the story, there was a stony silence.
I know.
Nobody laughed.
No.
We laughed because you did.
Oh, really? Oh, dear.
Your reaction to it.
It sounded like it needed a punchline to my ear.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to say, and the moral of the story.
A good storyteller never tells you what the moral is, because you will hear that story, as I've just shared, in a different way to everybody else. So you draw your own morals. You never tell that. So I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't laugh, but there were people smiling.
Well, they were waiting for something.
Okay. Well, that was the end. It was obvious. How can you go on? How could you go on after that? They all died. That's it.
Laughter is contagious.
Yes,
Someone
yes.
laughing.
I've got that in my notes as well.
And,
Yeah. Okay, so and the other thing about that story is, I mean, I always invite people when I've told them a story that they like, and I think most of you did enjoy the story. It's a deep story. To tell it to someone else, and you know, even children maybe from 7 upwards can appreciate that story. Because I did ask a school class of 7-year-olds once, you know, what did you think? I never tell them what the moral or message is, because it would be different for everybody. What did you think of that story? And somebody said, well, it was their fault, wasn't it? Very down to earth, you know. They caused it themselves. Okay, so I'm going to invite the bell now, just to finish. And I hope, I hope you've enjoyed. It wasn't a Dharma talk. It was just a talk on sharing my perceptions about humour. Thay uses humour in a very much deeper way than that. And I invite you to watch The Seed and the Corn or any other. There's always humour in his Dharma talks, always. Not that telling a story, but the things he says. He always uses humour. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming, being here with me. I've enjoyed it very much. I'll invite the bell twice to finish and then send you on your way with a peaceful mind.